Okay, we're gonna get started. And again, these webinars are always recorded, so we can share that later in our YouTube channel or also on our newsletter. Again, thank you for being here today. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about, right? Like as you guys know, like we have been like in Dallas already for 7, 8 years, and in real estate for about 7 years, and we are doing both actually right now, like residential and commercial real estate. So was asked a couple of times about like this type of information. So let's get started. Let me just try to share my screen. Just give me 1 second. All right, let's get started. So we're gonna share this, like, so for the people who don't know us, my wife and I were both from Peru, born and raised in Lima, Peru. We both are physicians. We actually went like to the same medical school, and we were in the same class for about 7 to 8 years. Have been married and living here in the U.S. for about 17 years already. We have two boys, Leon Lucas, 12 and 9 years old now. This is 8, but he's 9. My wife is a family medicine physician and a full-time pulmonary and critical care doc. And as I mentioned before, we have been in real estate for about 7 years now. Time flies, right? So this is something that I get to being asked like a couple of times, several times a month, sometimes. Um, if I were to invest $50,000 with you today, what kind of return should I expect, right? And first, some disclosures, right? Like it's always important to be transparent and honest, right? I mean, like some disclosures again, like past performance doesn't imply or doesn't assure like future results, right? Like this is an investment, right? Like if someone with any investment assures you that you're gonna get some type of return, I mean, like it's not being like fully honest with you, right? Like so, first do your due diligence, and you need to discuss with your your CPA or financial advisor, do your own due diligence, right? Like, and the last thing is that this webinar and these educational materials that I share with you guys is mainly like again like for education and for information, right? So invest passively in real estate syndications 101. So what you need to know to start investing in real estate syndications. So the first thing is like, what is a real estate syndication, right? Like so, and more than that, like what is a syndication, right? Like, and this may be like something new for some of us, but this has been around for many decades actually, and it's mainly means group investing, right? Like for real estate or for any other type of investment, right? Like so, it's a group of people, active and passive investors, join forces and put their money and their efforts together to invest in a real estate asset together, right? Like so, it has advantages for both groups, right? Like for the active and for the passive investors, right? Like for the passive investors, allows you to put your money to work in real estate without having to do like again like the work of being a landlord, or even like the work of buying the property and discussing with your property manager, right? And for the active investor, it also helps a lot, like because otherwise you wouldn't be able like to buy these multi-million-dollar properties, right? And try to to leverage your way up to higher wealth building. So why to invest, right? Why to invest as a passive investor, right? Like one of the most important things is time, right? Like so, time is something that doesn't come back, right? Like it's something that you cannot buy, right? Like so, you want to invest, you have a career, you have family, you have other interests, and you still want to invest, but you don't want to do the active work, right? Like physical assets too, right? Like, so you're investing in something that you can see where it's at, right? Like, it's kind of if you buy a property, a home rental, like it's a physical asset, right? You have an apartment complex, it's a physical asset. Kind of different as with stocks, right? Like it's just paper investments, or it's in the computer, right? Like, or cryptos, or the kind of investments like that. Stability, historically, real estate has been more stable like than the stock market. I mean, like, and just being fair with the stock market, the stock market over 10, 20, 30 years, I mean, it still goes up, right? Like, but again, like timing the market may be more difficult. Tax benefits, right? Like from the cash flow that you receive, like when you invest in real estate, cash flow again, like is kind of like a equivalent as the dividends when you invest in stocks, and also make a difference in local communities, right? Like so, when you invest in these properties, many times these properties are rundown properties that are not well managed and all of that. So you come and you kind of like clean up the community, you do renovations, you improve like the living space of the people who live there, right? And one of the advantages of these investments is that also you can invest with your own money, right? Like with your cash, right? Like everyone has some savings and bank accounts, but also you can invest with your retirement accounts, right? Like with your 401k, with your IRA. The the key in this is like, yeah, that is self-directed, right? It needs to be self-directed IRA, self-directed 401k. Now, who can invest, right? Like, so there are two types of investors: sophisticated investors and accredited investors, right? Like, so the first one that the description is there is for the accredited investor, right? Like an accredited investor, I mean, there's other different ways that you can access to the designation of accredited investor, but this is like the more common and usually easier way to be an accredited investor. You have at least $1 million in net worth, excluding your primary residence or home, or you make $200,000 per year as an individual, or $300,000 jointly with your spouse per year, and in the last 2 years, and you expect to have a similar income in the following year, right? Like, so these accredited investors are seen under the IRS, like and also like the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, as they're people who have been able to amass some wealth, and they are able like to examine like these kind of investment summaries, investment opportunities, and they can take an informed decision. For the sophisticated investors, they don't need to have this kind of wealth or this kind of income. However, they need to have a direct relationship with the sponsor, right? Like a prior relationship and meaningful relationship, right? Like, which usually goes along, like, again, like they have known each other. For example, like two people who have known each other from high school, then they have known each other for a long time, and one discovers that the other one is doing real estate and these kind of investments. They talk along the way, and one decides to invest, right? Like, so this is kind of a sophisticated investor, right? Like, because they have the prior relationship, and then like after discussing and after getting more education, he or she understands what type of investment we're talking about. How it works. It's mainly two groups, right? Like, as I mentioned at the beginning, the general partners or active investors and the limited partners, right? Like, so the general partners, they put together a real estate syndication. They put the real estate syndication together. So they do most of the active work, right? Like, and sometimes when you get presented with these investment opportunities, you don't necessarily realize like the amount of time, work, and effort general partners have put into putting this deal together, right? Like, so many times it can be months, it can be up to a year. Like I've seen a couple of my partners in the past that they were doing underwriting, they were trying to acquire a property. It takes like several months, even over a year at some point, to get one property under contract, right? So it takes time, it takes effort. For the limited partners, they also they're able to join these deals, right? Like, just mainly invest in capital, invest in their money, right? And they're able like to share together like the rewards or the returns. What are the fees, right? Like, so they're usually because that's important, and many times I get asked the same question, right? Like, so yeah, we're going to invest. These are the kind of returns. What are the fees? So how the sponsor is compensated? And the second thing is like, is that compensation gets to be deducted from my investment, from my returns, or these returns have accounted already for these fees, right? And usually they have accounted already, right? Like, so most of the time when someone with a sponsor presents an investment opportunity and he shows like the type of returns that are projected to get with an investment opportunity, all these fees are already put into the equation, and what you get to see is usually like the net profit. And this is kind of more industry standard, right? Like, so this is not necessarily depending from one sponsor to another. I mean, like, this is more, again, like something that it's across the board that happens. Like, in the past, we had even more types of fees, right? Like, we have here acquisitions fees, asset management fees, split of profits after pref, right? Like, we had before, in the past, like 4 or 5 years ago, refinance fees, disposition fees at the end, right? As the market has getting a little bit tighter, right? Like, and the returns are not probably as spectacular as it has been as in the last 10 years, right? Like, so this is what we have right now. So acquisition fees, right? Like it's usually 1 to 3% of the asset price. And many people would ask, like, why do you need acquisition fees? And it's mainly kind of explaining and being transparent about like what I told you at the beginning, right? Like, so many times it takes a lot of time and effort for a sponsor to get a property under contract, right? Like, so you need to do underwriting, you need to do analysis, you need to do projections, getting communication with property managers, getting communication with the broker for insurance, the broker for taxes, the lender, the broker for loans, right? Like, and put together a package, right? Like, and usually, I mean, like from 50 properties or 100 properties that you analyze, you probably put offers in 3 to 5 of them and probably get to be awarded with a deal in one of them, right? Like, so it takes a lot of time, and many times these properties are not in the same area where you live, right? Like, so for example, like I live in Dallas, and we have had properties in Chattanooga. We have had properties in Jacksonville, right? Like, and many times, in order like to do a good due diligence, you actually need to go and travel, like, and go to the actual property, right? Like, so you need to invest in, again, like transportation, traveling. You need to when you actually get into in contract, like when you to acquire these properties, you need to pay up front, right? Like you need to pay up front, for example, like the inspection company, right? Like the ones that are going to do, like they do the physical due diligence in the property, but also like the financial due diligence, right? Like, and you need to pay this in advance. And if for any reason you're not able to close on the property, or at the end you decide not to buy the property, you have invested all that money already, right? Like, so this is what we usually call like what keeps the lights on, right? Like, again, like, so they're the acquisition fees. Number two is like asset management fees, right? Like again, like industry standard, 2 to 3% of gross rents in all these properties, because they're big properties, and we have third-party property management companies that manage the day-to-day operations, that manage the tenants, they manage the rent collections, they manage repairs, renovations, all of that. But usually you cannot leave them by themselves, right? Like you need to have someone from the primary main sponsorship team to oversee the property management, right? Like you need to oversee your investment, right? Like you have invested a lot of capital there. So this person, the asset manager, which can be the same person who did the acquisition. I mean, like usually our group of general partners or active investors is a group of 3 to 4 to 5, 6, 7 people, like in the sponsorship team. So one of them is the one who does the asset management, right? Like, so he stays on top of the property management company, the close relationship, close communication, mainly, and most of the time is usually every week communications and meetings to see how the property is run. So and again, like this is a job, right? Like, and because of that, they get compensated for the same reason. And at the end of the the holding period, right? Like when they are about to sell the property, right? Like, and it's usually on the presentation about the investment opportunity, there's a split of profits after preferred returns, which we're going to talk about like in the next few slides. Usually 30% or 80-20%, right? Like, and usually like the 70 is for the passive investor, 30 is for the active investor. So what can you expect after you investing in real estate syndications? The communications, right? So that's very important. We all expect like our investments or our deals go right, but either if the deal goes right or wrong, like the communication is very important. And what should you expect? First, monthly updates, right? Like, so every month, like in any project, like usually is an update of the property of the deal is sent to the investors, to the active and the passive investors, right? Like it usually contains information about like the occupancy, again, like the renovations, like some very minimal like financial updates, etc. Right? Like, so quarterly we have more in-depth financial updates, right? Like, and we share about how we're doing in general and the projections for the year. For the distributions, I put here quarterly distributions, which has been happening in the last 2 years, but this is more sponsor dependent, right? There are some sponsors who do monthly distributions. There are some sponsors who do quarterly distributions, some sponsors who do every 6 months. So it mainly depends on the sponsor that you invest with, and also what is on the PPM, on private placement memorandum, or the contract that you and the sponsor sign to invest together. And also every year you get a Schedule K1, right? Like for your taxes, right? Which pretty much tells about, like, again, like the implications of this syndication in your passive investment, right? Returns, right? Like, so this is something that also I get asked like many times. You have cash on cash returns, right? Which is usually what is the cash flow or passive income, usually as preferred return, right? Like in preferred return means like the first percentage, right, being 5 or 8% per year, goes to the passive investor. And this means, like, even if for any reason, for example, like the property is not doing that well and they are not able to do distributions in the first or second year, this gets accrued, right? Like, so when the property is sold, like 4, 5, 6 years later, before any split, before anyone is paid, you need to make sure that the passive investor is paid first, this accrued 5 to 8% per year, right? The second is like a split of profits, right? Like, and this is in the PPM or in the contract that we sign, and also this is in the presentation, right? Like when you attend that webinar or when you receive like the webinar presentation, the profit upon sale of the property, additional 40 to 60% plus original capital. For an annual average, together the cash on cash returns or cash flow and or passive income plus the split of profits make around like 15 to 20% returns per year. So three main concepts to grasp about like how this works. Again, like after you have invested in a syndication, whether it's a real estate syndication for apartment complexes or for storage or for mobile parks or for ATMs or even for energy, oil and energy, projected hold time, projected cash on cash returns, and projected profits at sale. So the projected hold time, right? Like it's the number of years that we would hold the asset before selling it, right? Like the number of years that we own the property, right? Like so, and this is very important because you need to know about these because syndications are an illiquid investment. So which means that once you invest or you capital or put your capital there, you need to think about that your capital or money is going to be there in the investment for a long period of time, right? Like many times 5 to 7 years. You're not able like to take out your money, like for example, if it would be in the bank or if you would have stocks and you decide to sell them, you can usually cash out like in a couple of days, in a week, right? Like, but even if you own a single family home, for example, you decide you want your money or you want to sell. I mean, like in theory, you can sell the property and close on the property in 1 or 2 or 3 months, right? Like in this case, it's different, right? Like so, yeah, and it's usually 5 to 7 years. This provides, and this is important. Why, right? Like because it provides a buffer between like the estimated sale and the typical 7 to 10 year commercial loan term, right? Like so, for any reason, if the market is a little bit worse after 5 years, we can opt to hold on the property for a little bit longer, right? Like and allowing for the market to rebound, and also like having a property for 5 to 7 years, it allows for us or for the general sponsorship team to make the improvements in the property and also to bring the rents up to market standards, right? Like, and this is going to make like the property to appreciate more. Projected cash on cash returns, right? Like again, as I mentioned, is the cash flow or passive income, right? Like so, it's mainly again like it says here, like what remains after vacancy costs, mortgage, and expenses. It is the pot of money that gets distributed to investors, usually as preferred return, right? Like, and it's usually 5 to 8% per year. So that means like if you invested $100,000 and the preferred return is $8,000 per year, the projected cash flow would be around $8,000 per year or seven dollars per month. I mean, like I mentioned before, like distributions can be monthly or can be like quarterly. And that's over the life of the investment, around $40,000 over 5 years. And the projected profit upon sale is usually we try to aim or target 40 to 60%, right? So in as I mentioned before, right, like in 5 to 7 years, the units have been that gives time for us to update the units, right? Like the tenants are are stronger tenants, right? Like with better records in paying on time and things like that. The rent accurately reflects market rents. They are not under market anymore, right? And these improvements, along with market appreciation, and again, like market appreciation is the probably the icing on the cake, right? Like, and we know that from 2010 to 2020, 21, like the appreciation was great. The last 2 years, it has been a little bit more rocky, more difficult. But overall, right? Like again, like you should try to make like forced appreciation in doing these renovations, in improving rents, all of that. But if the market also appreciates naturally, is even better, right? Like, so this typically leads to a substantial increase in the overall value of the asset, right? Like that's leading to better profits upon the sale. All right. And conclusion, right? Like just to close this, right? Like so typical the deals that in general we do, and in general like industry does, right? Like we're looking at the following, right? Like so you need to think about that your investment or capital will be there 5 to 7 years, right? We usually aim 5 to 8% annual cash on cash returns in the mode of preferred return, which again means the first 5 to 8% goes to the passive investor. For any reason, the property is not doing that well, and we're not able like to make. So, for example, let's say like someone offers 8% preferred return per year, but the property is only making 5% return per year. This 3% every year gets accrued, and at the end, when the property is sold, the sponsor makes sure that this 3% per year is paid first to the passive investor, and after this 8% return, preferred return is paid, then you can expect the split, right? Like which is usually another 40 to 60% for the passive investor, right? Like as an example, again, if you do invest $100,000, hold for 5 years, collect $8,000 per year in cash flow distributions, paid out monthly, a total of 40,000 over years. And actually, when you sell the property, you make another 40 to $60,000, right? This results in 200K at the end of 5 years, right? Like the return of your initial investment, 100K, and $100,000 in total returns. All right. And this is, you guys may know already, visited our website. And this is us. I've been around already for 3.5 years. Again, as I mentioned, like time flies when you have fun and you're busy. This is our YouTube channel. A lot of education. Initially, again, like mainly for syndications and apartment complex, but we have tried to, again, like democratize a little bit more, like, and also do other things like mindset, general real estate, and general financial literacy. And I always try to finish with a positive quote. So this is from Martin Luther King. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. Okay, so let me stop sharing. Now we'll go and see if we have any questions from you guys. Yes, and I guess so. Difference between IRR and ARR, right? Like so ARR is annual return, right? And IRR is internal rate of return. So I can do that with a kind of simple example, right? Like so, for example, if you have a deal where you are expected to receive 20% per year, or 5 years, you will receive 100% extra, right? Like so, in 5 years, you receive 100% return. So, which means per year you receive a 20% return, right? Like so, the annual return investment in that case is 20%, right? But it's different when, for example, you invest $100,000 and you do a refinance in the second year, and you'll get returned half of your money that you invested, right? Like, so let's say like you invest 50%, $100,000, and they do the refinance in the second year, and you receive $50,000. Right now, after the second year, you only have your capital in the property. You have $50,000, and you get your $50,000 initial investment back to you, and you can do with that money other types of investment. You can do other things, right? Like so, IRR, or internal rate of return, it's kind of similar as the ARR, but also takes into account the time that your money is in the deal. right? Like, and usually, again, like we usually look for higher IRR, right? Like, again, like that's the velocity of working for your money, right? Like, so yeah. So I hope that helps
Yeah, that's helpful. Yep.
to
Thanks, Harry.
describe a little bit, right? Like, so again, like
Yep.
it's mainly the main difference is how time works with your investment, right? Like, and it's not the same having your full $100,000 the 5 years versus having your $50,000 or $100,000 for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, and then like to have the rest of your money, right? Like, so yeah, yeah. So very good. So, and we're approaching the 30 minutes already. Just let me know if you have any other questions. If still, you can email me or reach out in. You guys know, like we're very active in LinkedIn and in social media, so you can reach out there too. And yeah, so thank you again. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for your time. Hope to see you guys next month. All right. And again, if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Reach out to me. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.